It's time again for the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast with Dr. John Dentico. The mission of our podcast is to provide 21st century leadership training for a talent-driven world. We help organizations implement strategies and practices designed to attract, hire, engage, and retain top talent while mitigating the effects of burnout. Our guests are experts in various fields of organizational dynamics, including, but not limited to, leadership, management, communication, and coaching. They bring a world of knowledge and solutions to our viewers and listeners. I am sincerely grateful for their participation and ideas. So let's dive in. And if you enjoy our podcast, please like, share, and subscribe. We genuinely appreciate your support. Hello again, and welcome to the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. This morning, my guest is Evan Zivanakis, an executive coach and facilitator with 15 years of international experience. He has lived and worked in 8 different countries. He is also an adjunct lecturer at the EU Business School in Switzerland and the author of the book Leading in VUCA Times. I am truly pleased he is joining me today on the podcast. Good morning, Evan. Welcome, and how are you doing this day?
Good morning, good afternoon.
Very
Thank you
nice
for
to
asking.
see you. Yeah, it's
How-
taken us a couple of times to get the timing right for our podcast this morning. So I'm really glad that he's here. Let me ask this question. If someone were to walk up to you and ask you for your perspective or your definition of leadership, something they could
Yeah,
grasp onto, what would you tell them? And has the idea changed in the wake of the COVID pandemic?
I will start by answering the second part first and then give you my definition. It has changed a lot. We are moving from a leadership style, we are moving from control to influence. And the definition of leadership I have is the ability to put a group of people together to get remarkable things done. I break it down into 3: ability, not attitude, because leaders are really made. Number 2, to put a group of like-minded people together. Leadership is about people, and all leaders have followers, and if you have no followers, you're not a leader. Just like the flock of birds migrating every autumn to winter climates, if nobody is following you, you are not leading anything. So can you put a bunch of people together? And the last thing is execution, to get things done. So 3 things for me: leadership is ability, people, execution.
Great. It's interesting you should say that. The great Peter Drucker once said, all leaders have followers. I myself have moved away from that term, followers. As we look across the horizon, I see them much more as partners or collaborators in, as you say, this venture to get things done. Any
Yeah.
comment on that?
Collaborators, the way you put it, it's a fantastic word. And people work, especially you mentioned the pandemic, things have changed a lot. We have hybrid work, we have remote, and as more interactions happen digitally, people, me, you, employees, managers, we continue to experience new forms of miscommunication and misunderstanding. So, where is the solution? If you were to ask me, I would say that the solution lies in building a skill set that reflects the demands of a digitally driven age. There is no more management by walking about, is it? You cannot do management by walking about physically. You can do a little bit, but it's changing.
I would agree. I think the whole hybrid work environment has changed the dynamic of people working together. Things I've noticed about reading about your work is we're orbiting, if you will, around the same planets, as I like to say, attracting, hiring, and retaining top talent. As you look across the horizon of the issues in organizations that have not figured out how to do this successfully, what would you say are the missing ingredients to keeping and getting top talent?
Yeah. First of all, if I can share with you, John, is the fact that I believe very much so that leadership is much more, it's like those chocolate fountains that you see when you go to weddings. It flows from the top. So I really believe that. So any change or any influence that you want to see, it should start from the top. The top should model the behavior they want to see. They are the ones setting the example. They are the ones setting the standard. I'm very much, you can call it old school, but that's how it is. You cannot expect your people to do the things you are not prepared to do. That's number one. Number two, and I hope you like the analogy of the chocolate fountain. Yeah, it flows from the top. I very much believe that leadership is like this. Now, don't get me wrong, management can be tough. I remember 15 years ago when I was starting as a manager in the UK. I was 25 years old, first time manager. I realized the importance on having succession plans in place for the business to thrive. But however, I encountered challenges um, because I noticed I was the one blocking my team. Have you heard of the term the bottleneck manager?
Maybe not in those exact terms, but it's an interesting visualization. Go right ahead with it.
Yes, management can be tough, and I remember, especially if you are managing for the first time, or if you're handling too many plates. At first, I did not see myself as me being the issue. Okay, I believed the problem was somewhere else, and that the problem was beyond my control. And a lot of managers things like this. But over time, I understood the slow progress and the loss of great employees was happening due to my own bottleneck behavior as a leader. And what is a bottleneck behavior for people that are listening? My calendar was constantly overflowing with tasks and meetings. A second characteristic of a bottleneck manager is that my department cannot move forward without me being involved in everything. Do you really need to be involved in everything as a manager? I don't think so. Also clients, some of the clients, they looked for my direct attention rather than from the sales manager, which led to a very imbalanced workload and team dynamics. Therefore, my key team members, my senior leadership team, lacked the confidence to take on challenging tasks because I was too much involved in everything, and I ended up becoming a micro. I was the kind of manager that an employee will send you an email, I will be CC'd, and I would reply before you replied. I would reply before you even read the email, and that creates extra work. This is what I call by bottleneck managers. With that experience and learning from failures, I suppose the tips I can give is to allow your best employees to grow and lead, allow them to make some mistakes, and make sure to back up your actions with clear results that everyone can see and understand. And you don't need to be involved in everything. You need to understand what are the critical things that you need to be involved, and let your team run. Don't expect your kid to learn how to walk if every time they fall down you run after them. They will get scared.
Agreed. I think that's a very important lesson to learn. Several of my previous podcast guests have talked about the ability of a leader to be vulnerable. That's the term we use. In other words, to be vulnerable, to admit your mistakes, to say, hey, listen, I didn't get that, but, and so opening up and allowing other people to become involved in the actions and the decision making processes. So I agree with you. Now, much credit to you for recognizing that and realizing that and making the personal changes you made in order to move beyond that point. So, and I think people, I think this has been happening for years, But I think many times people are unwilling to do that. They hold tight to what they know and what they have instead of, in a sense, letting go and trying to learn a new way of doing it. And if they don't let go, all as you said, you create this toxic workplace, in a manner of speaking, that really holds people back and diminishes the things that you can in fact accomplish. So I agree with you. Let me ask you this question. Right now, what do you think are the three most prevalent challenges facing remote or hybrid work teams? What are the things that they face that maybe weren't apparent before the pandemic?
Yeah. I suppose you mean both from employee and manager perspective? Anybody, right? Anyone?
Yeah, anybody, yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
just let it go.
Like 3, 4 years ago. And when employees shifted to work from home, the question that went through a lot of managers' minds was, are they really working when they are working from home? So trust. And as a manager, you cannot demand trust. And as an employee, you cannot demand trust. And what is the best way to earn your trust is to show you trust others. That's the only way. Yeah, I can give you some tips and have activities and team building and all that malarkey and all that. But really, psychologically inside, the best way to gain trust is to show you trust others. And what is the worst thing that you can do as a manager? Worse than not trusting your people is to show them you don't trust them. If you show them you don't trust them, why you hire them? And you mentioned about ego and control, and the minute, if you let control, it's not easy thing to do, but it's really something liberating. So trust is number one. Communication is number two. Communication is number two, because it's face to face. It's all, let's not hide it. Face to face, it's always different from remote. Okay, so clear communication is really important. Really clear communication, and don't assume when you're communicating online. Do not assume that others understand your shorthands. So, as a manager, I suggest to spend time to communicate with the intention of being ultra clear. Okay?
Yeah.
Communication, I believe, is the hallmark of effective leadership. And all the successful leaders I had the opportunity to work with and sometimes coach and train, I can see that they are good communicators. A good communicator is somebody that makes their message engaging enough to be understood, to be exciting, and simple enough to be understood. And number three is execution. I'm a big believer of execution. Is I think is the second time I use this word. Unless your team is customer service and they need to work shifts, for example, do you really care as a manager when they complete their work, or if they complete it within the agreeable time frame in your expected quality? If you are managing a marketing team or a sales team or a graphic designer team, do you really care if they work at 3 o'clock in the morning or at 9? It doesn't matter, as long as they participate in the meetings and as long as they execute and they deliver on time and they end in the expected quality. So trust, communication, and execution. And is a challenge, is also an opportunity, if I can add to this. Remote and hybrid, it could be a little bit more challenging. Yes, I understand that. But also with remote work, the world could be your recruitment field. If you want to find out your employee, you don't engage them, you engage one by one by sitting down and finding out their needs, their wants, their motivations, their life. And I believe that as a manager, the more you know about your people, the better you can manage. Back to you.
I absolutely agree with you. I think I've done a number of presentations across America over the course of the last year. And one of the things, for example, one presentation, one of the gentlemen asked me a question, and was confused over the idea that exactly what you said, that you really need to take the time to get to know the people. This is about them in the beginning. And he was fixated, if you will, on trying to sell the organization to the person and tell them, oh, this is what we do. These are health benefits. These are all these different things. I said, wait a minute. Wait, where are you going with this? Hold on. Take it easy. Let's find out what's going on with them. In my research, the three things that I'm sure my listeners may get tired of me repeating this, but I'm sorry. But the three things that we see now is number one, people who hire onto a company want to ensure that there's a values alignment, that their values align with the organization. Number two is people want to be involved in the decision making processes of the organization. People
Big one.
want to
Yeah,
do work. Yeah, huge. It's absolutely
it's
huge. It's
huge.
all about meaning. It's all about meaning. People want to gain a sense of meaning from the things that they do. To me, it's the greatest motivational force on the planet. And the third one is they want training and
Yeah,
learning that is going to help them develop. And I think many times, this is my perspective, the person you're interviewing or the people you're getting to know may not be the right person for this particular organization and for this particular
absolutely.
job. And it's good to know that up front to help them. I don't know if it's going to work for you here. You can give it a try, but I don't know if it's going to work here. I mean, you may be looking for something else. So that, because turnover, as you well know, costs a lot of money. It's expensive when you're turning people over at a very high rate.
I hated it when I had to let somebody go, if it was my decision or their decision, because nothing guarantee. I remember nothing guarantees me that the next person will be better.
That's exactly
And
right.
I want to give people a chance. There is a limit, but
Right.
I'm always trying to stretch that limit. If
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's interesting that you landed on this subject. One of my most favorite subjects to talk about is trust. And I agree with you that you have to go out and take action to build trust. You have to do something to build trust. It's not something that just happens. People have to earn trust, if you will. So let me ask you this question. A colleague of mine refers to the times we live today as a time of great trust deficit. Yeah. We're in this trust deficit. How do you see trust as being important
yeah,
among teams and the organization as a whole?
how do I see it? Trust is the most important factor. Without it, you cannot do anything, and with you can do a lot. And in my opinion, it's one of those things. I'll give you a story. It happened a few thousand years ago. A real story. I wasn't there. It was Alexander the Great marching in Persia, in what today is Iran. True story written in the books. And around 500 soldiers and him, and they ran out of water in the middle of the desert. So his general went to him and he said, "My king, I'm going to take a couple of best horses and a couple of the strongest men and some ceramic bottles and go around and find some water. You rest here with the crew." And they came back a couple of days later. The general ran to Alexander the Great. He kneeled in front of him, took out his helmet, and poured fresh water. And he told him, "My king, here is fresh water for you." So Alexander the Great did the unthinkable. He took the water and he took the helmet and emptied the water on the floor. And he said, "Give water to my people first." Now, the question I have, would you fight for this leader or not? You prob.
You bet.
So it's, and we live in the information, we don't live in the industrial era anymore. We live in the information era. There is a lot of mistrust around social media, fake news. We don't really know what to believe sometimes. We need to verify and double verify. And where is the news coming from? And same, it's not like in the industrial era where the management style was very much so, I say, you don't question, you don't think. It's a totally different. environment, is a totally different world that we live in. People are educated, and I don't mean college educated. Information is so much available anymore, and we don't only read and hear the news from the newspaper. There, it used to be the newspaper, the radio, and the TV. Now information is available everywhere, so we live in a totally different world. And something, it's a trust, it's something that comes with time, whether you're an employee, a CEO, or a manager, or a business owner. And again, the worst thing that you can do is to show you don't trust. And I believe that really the solution will not come from new technologies. Don't get me wrong, technology is good, AI and all of it. But I believe that instead, the solution is in understanding the new rules of engagement and in building a communication skill set that reflects the demands of our digitally driven age.
Points well taken. I appreciate that. No, and I agree with you. I think trust is, if you don't have it, you have nothing, just as you said. It is the single most, I call it the value that cuts across the other values. It's transcendent in its importance in organizations. I had a guest on not too long ago named Ed Temple. He's a coach in Canada. And he said something so very interesting. He said, and he's of course using AI now for coaching as part of what he presents to his clients. But then he made this comment and he said, AI is coming along and everybody's using it. He said, so if we reserve 15, 10, 15, or 20% to the human experience, all the new technology is going to do is make that 15 or 20% even more important than it was in the past. And
Right.
I thought that was a very incredible observation that he made. That, in the end, it's, as another colleague of mine, Jeff DeCagda, says, in the end, and who is an AI expert, said, in the end, it's always about the people. And if you could remember that, I think that's really important. I wanted to ask you this question. I've spoken with colleagues from the UK, from Australia, from Canada, and they all agree we are in this struggle for talent. Okay. I know you live in Germany, and so my question to you is, do you see the same thing?
More than usual, I've noticed it. More than usual, employees want it, waiter want it, bar staff want it. And out of curiosity, and I went in and asked some of those managers, restaurant managers, whoever of influence I could find in the establishment at the time, and they said, young people don't, I don't want to say it like this, but they said people don't want to work, especially the younger generation. They prefer to run something on YouTube. They don't want to do jobs, especially jobs that they don't like anymore. Like they said, young people don't want to be serving clients anymore. They don't want to be doing this kind of work. They don't want that. It's a totally different. I grew up, it's totally different. Like nowadays, if you're 20, 25 years old, literally, you can do everything from your phone. You can order your food from your phone. You can earn money from your phone. You can do your banking from your phone. You can order Grab or Uber from your phone. You can literally do everything from your phone. So does technology, maybe technology has changed things, maybe it's a mixture. It's COVID, lockdowns, technology, the great resignation, which I call it the great reevaluation. It leads to the great resignation, but it's actually, if you think about it, it is the great reevaluation of what do I really want to do, what do I value. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, not long time ago, if you had a job, you were so grateful. Thank you, boss. Thank you, factory owner. Thank you, manager, for giving me an opportunity. Now it's totally different. And I see it in Greece where I spent some summer holidays. I see it in Germany. I saw it in Asia. And there is struggle for hiring. And if even more struggle is to retain,
Agreed.
to keep.
Yeah. I yeah, and in the States, for example, wherever I go, whatever group I'm speaking to, it's always the same problem. We need talent, I need people who want to do the work, and we're confused, if you will, if I could use that term. We're confused of what does it take to keep them engaged in the organization, to keep them engaged in what our mission is. It's a very perplexing problem. And again, I go back to the big three: values,
Yeah.
involvement in decision making, and people want, and training. And I think there's a lot of, we're missing that. We're missing the fact that this is so important to them that it will it cure the problem? Hopefully. But will it make it better? I think it will. I think it will make it better. Interesting. Let me ask you this question. Can you give my listeners a specific example of one of the jobs that you did where you had a problem or an issue and you were called in to help? And what did you do? What did you find? What did you do? And what was the outcome?
Yeah. Before I do that, for employee engagement, just to wrap up, I think it's
Sure.
not just the people, it's not just us, but I think it's also the problem and the challenge is operational from company's point of view. I see a lot of companies that they don't have proper recruitment structures in place. They don't get back to employees. They're not organized. In my career coaching, I see people complaining that, yeah, I can see some, and I see sometimes that unfortunately, the HR departments in a lot of companies, it is not seen as HR. It's just a recruitment department. And a lot of the times, if you ask an HR director, what are the targets for the company? What are the values? Where is the company going in the next 5 years? They don't know. It is I see often a misalignment of where the company is heading and how is HR is supporting. It feels like that HR is just there for recruitment. Now, the other problem, the question that you asked me, it was about employee engagement. Quite interesting. And the CEO said they're not engaged, my people, for a technology company a few months back in the Czech Republic. And they said, and we went through some coaching questions and all that. And let me share with you the outcome and what I have discussed with the CEO. I said to him, we at the end, I just shared my experience. I said at the end of the engagement, I said that effective leaders know how to balance three things. And he said to me, what? Effective managers, effective leaders, good leaders, whatever you want to call it, they know how to balance, and the magic word here is balance three things: results, relationships, ego. If you as a manager, you are pushing too much for results, you will get results. And we see that a lot in transactional leadership style, in sales managers and VP of sales. But if you push too much for results, you will get results, but you will struggle to retain your people. The second that you need to balance with results is relationships. If you are too friendly with your staff, you will retain a lot of people, but you will struggle to push for results because you cannot push too much somebody that you are too friends with. And the last thing is ego. If you come across as too egoistical, is all about me, is all about me, is all about me, your people will tell you, I'm happy for you, but what is in it for me? This is what they will think. So good managers know how to balance those three things at the same time: results, relationships, ego.
I appreciate that. That's great. I think you're right. I think too often, in my experience, ego gets too much in the way. It's more about them than it is about the people. And for me, leadership is always about the people.
Why? That's why, sorry to interrupt you, in my
Go ahead. No,
experience, that's why, in my experience, managers who come from a sales background have a high chance of succeeding
because
because they know that it's not about them, it's about the other person, it's about the end user, it's about the buyer,
the
and they
client,
have the client, the customers. And I say the customers, the manager's customer is not the customer, the manager's customer is the employee. But if you come from a sales background, you understand through your failures and through your experience that the best way to sell is not by throwing up at the client. The best way to sell is to first by diagnosing and then presenting. Selling is not telling.
Agreed.
So it's never about
Agreed.
you. It's never about me. It's always about them.
That's exactly right. It's always about the problem. How do you ease their pain? How do you take the pain and the problem away from them? I agree with you completely. Let me ask you my last question that I normally ask people as we move along. And that is simply this: if you had a magic wand and you could wave it at a particular issue that you see in your work, what would that issue be and why did you choose it?
Yeah, I would. My one will help everyone to listen more, and it's something I had to work with. Listen more. Listen, but not hearing, listening. I hear the car passing, but I'm not focused on the sound. I don't know what, if I want really to listen, I need to stand up, to look at the road, to look at the car, to look at the color, to look at the brand. Listening with the intention to understand, not with the intention to reply. Listening with the heart, listening with the eyes, listening with the head, not just listening with the ears. Especially, I see this kind of managers when you do performance reviews and employee reviews, or when you're having a casual conversation with your employees. From their reactions, you can understand more compared to the words, facial expressions, and all that. For example, if you ask an employee, hey, how is the project going? And they tell you, you already have your answer. You already know what is going on compared to, oh, things are going great, we have a challenge. It's a different tonality, it's a different facial expression, it's a different feeling. This is what I would do. I will help people to listen more with the intention to understand.
Great. I appreciate that so very much. And I appreciate the time with you this morning, Evan. Great job. I appreciate it. And I know my listeners will get a lot out of it. So, wishing you the best in the future. Thank you so very much for being here with me today on the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast.